BDSM and non-standard relationships,
Power exchange and polyamory,
sacred sexuality and fetishes, as well as simply fun kink.
You'll find shows on these topics and more at eroticawakeningpodcast.com.
Hello, all you scabies. This is Great Answer with another rope cast from the rope bondage capital of the world, Madison, Wisconsin. And I notice I have a lot more listeners now that I am out on iHeartRadio and also going out to Tumblr, which is pretty damn cool. If you're new, well, there's a lot of catching up to do. So go back to the number 1 episode at ropecast.com and start listening. Or you could just keep listening now because really there's no need to go in sequence at all. This podcast is brought to you with the wonderful support and help of Karma Rope. That's karmarope.com. And why do we love them? We love Karma Rope because they give you rope at a price that you absolutely can afford. And we know this because it is literally pay what you can pricing. There's a phrase that is like that for events, and it's called no one turned away for lack of funds, is the way some events have done that. And I really like that idea. I've managed to use it in a few of my events. Sometimes it's not fiscally possible, but sometimes it is. And I was really happy to see that Karma Rope adopted that model and put it into rope. And the way it works is, if you say, I want to try out jute rope, or I want to try out some hemp rope, and you're like, I really want to do it, but I can't afford the $30-some or whatever per length for this highfalutin fancy rope that is over here. And especially since I don't know if it's even going to feel good. What if I don't like it? Well, that's when you call up karmarope.com and you say, send me 3 lengths of 8 meters of hemp, and they pull it off the spool, they put it in a plastic bag, send it off to you, you try it out, and if you are like most people, you go, oh my god, I love this is fantastic, because that tends to be the way that people act when they used to use some kind of synthetic and they move to an organic rope. Not everyone, but some people, most people. Is that what happened with you, Naya?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what happened when you put your serva on the spot in the middle of things. Yes, whatever the answer was. But anyway, so thank you for sponsoring the Ropecast as well. They are also the sponsors, co-sponsors, along with Twisted Monk, to the Person of Color Safe Space Scholarship that the Ropecraft is putting out there, and that is to set up a safe space at an event, which there's a lot of events that have that, and I'm really glad they do. In this particular case, Karma Rope is covering the travel costs for this particular coordinator, and at the same time, Twisted Monk is covering the hotel costs. So the two of them are really helping out, and of course we're comping them and a additional companion to come to the event in Ropecraft NOLA. That's Ropecraft NOLA, NOLA, .bpt.me, in case you haven't gotten your tickets yet. And you should, because they will go up in August. Dun, dun, dun. So we're also going to be doing a lot of announcements. We're doing the class announcements for Ropecraft and announcing the sales of gala dinner tickets. I have been hard at work with Kashmira, our gala dinner coordinator, and we have the floor layout. I am so excited. We had 1 stage last year for entertainment. This year we have 3 stages, and if you buy your gala dinner ticket, just so you know, among other things, you'll be entered into a drawing to get 2 free passes to the next Ropecraft, which means your $29 gala ticket. That's right, they're only $29 each. Your $29 gala ticket will be potentially worth about $400. So just put it out there. There's a limited number of tickets. They're not on sale yet. I'm just kind of planting the seed in your mind about what might happen at Ropecraft if you're going to be there. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at a lot of different places, but the next place I'm going to be is the San Diego GRUE. Well, actually, the next place I'm going to be, silly me, is Synergy up in Michigan. But that event's sold out. So, well, I can tell you it's a fantastic event, and you should all go to it at some point. You can't go to it this year. Sorry. But I'm looking forward to going, and along with Naya, and the blonde is coming with us too. That's our girlfriend, so that's exciting.
Stealing all the Pokemon.
What? We're stealing all the Pokemon? What?
It's apparently a Pokemon gym.
Oh, it's a Pokemon gym as well. My God, that's how I can't believe how popular that's going to be. But then I'll be going to San Diego. You can find out about the San Diego GRUE at sd.gru.space. And a couple weeks after that, I'll be going to Boston for the Boston GRUE. And you can find out more about that at boston.gru.space. And there's more events coming up too, but I'm not going to talk about all those because I only have one more announcement. This is a long ropecast, and just so you know, you asked for a long ropecast. I got about 50-50 on the responses for the poll, but I also got several specifically put out there messages from people like Pendorbound and Twisted View, who specifically said they really like the long format. And I figure if they take the time to actually write me a long message, that I would go ahead and put out a long podcast just for them. But this podcast, I'm going to shorten a little bit by just having one announcement, and that is an announcement that you can now put announcements on the Ropecast. You may have heard recently that FetLife became a sort of gated community. They decided to cut down on the level of spam accounts and Puppet accounts by going to an invite only. Now, before you ask me, no, I do not have any invites to hand out. I unfortunately have not had the budget to be a FetLife supporter, so I don't have any invites to hand out. But I also understand that this is going to make it a little more difficult for people to maybe find out about events and stuff like that. And in my small way, I would like to help out with that. So if you have an announcement for an event or a munch or something like that in your area, and you're hoping that more people can hear about it, you can go to ropecast.com/announcement. I know it's hard to remember, right? ropecast.com/announcement. There's a Google form there. Fill out the form, hit submit, and I will get word of your announcement, and I'll put it on in the next Timely Ropecast. Now, before you say, hey, I didn't hear my announcement, well, there could be lots of reasons for that. This is a very bare bones thing. And one of the reasons could be that I didn't want to announce it. So, this is just this is my podcast, and until such a time as I am completely supported by the sponsors, I still get to decide what goes on it. So, be nice. I'd be glad to share the news, as you may have heard. And let's go from there right into our interview. Our interview is with a fascinating person who I met at the recent Toronto GRUE. Yay, Toronto GRUE! She is SuiSauce, and you're going to hear all about how we met and what kind of experience we had at the GRUE and what kind of experience she had at the GRUE, and a lot more to come. This has been a really fun interview. It's a nice long one. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So I'm very lucky that on this beautiful day here in the rope bondage capital of the world, Madison, Wisconsin, I get to have a chat across the miles and miles and miles into another country even to talk with SuiSauce from Toronto. And I met SuiSauce at the Toronto GRUE. Hi, welcome to the Ropecast.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start out by being careful and saying what gender pronoun should I use?
She and her are perfectly fine. Thank you.
Excellent. See, this is modeling behavior. So first met her at the meet and greet. And SuiSauce, I'm going to show you my impression of meeting you at the meet and greet real quick.
Sure.
So when we were it was at the bar called the Rhino, and we were in the back. There was also a bunch of wedding people in the front, kind of being noisy and stuff. But we were all in the back being noisy and stuff. And
Mhm.
I remember seeing you walk in. I didn't have a chance to actually talk to you at the moment and do my job as the facilitator and say hi. And it wasn't actually until the very, very end that I was waiting to pay my check, and you happened to be standing there. And I think I said something like, "Hi, I didn't get a chance to meet you," or something along those lines.
Mhm.
And your response was sort of like a, and why did you want to say hi? It was like it was a guarded response, and I got that, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just because I'm the facilitator, and my job is to say hi, so hi. I think I said something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
Yeah.
I know that my purpose was to definitely send off the "Hey, I am not trying to pick you up" kind of vibe at the time. And later on, when I saw you did a Twitter feed about your experience, you didn't actually have a very good experience at the meet and greet. Is that correct?
I would say that it was 50-50. I met some pretty interesting people, but I guess you could say the initial part of my experience there was a little touch and go at first, for sure. Yeah.
Can
Uh,
you tell us why?
well, I when I first got there, I was talking with, I think it was JP.
Hmm.
He was kind of just pointing out some people that were around the room, saying, what was happening, what I could expect, and things like that. And when he turned around and I looked at the group, um, my attention was immediately snagged by a couple that said that they were from Ottawa, and they invited me to their table, right? So at first I was like, oh, that's cool. They're being welcoming. So I said, sure, I'll join your table. I'll come and talk to you guys. And it didn't take long the for that particular situation to really convey the message of, oh, we want to talk to you and only you, and we want you to talk to us. And in the past, whenever I've had experiences like this, it is because there is an expectation that I am usually, being an Asian woman, I would be free for play, that I'm probably submissive, that I'm probably a bottom, and that I would be relatively easier to pick up. And um,
And that's not the case. I take it.
no, I would like to say it's not the case. Um, so and that whole situation didn't really click for me until a little later in the conversation, where I realized, oh, my back is turned to the rest of this table. Maybe I should turn and introduce myself. So I turned around, and the other people at the group, there was, I don't know if they're okay with me mentioning their names, so I'm just going to say there
Yeah,
was,
let's keep it anonymous.
sure, there was one wonderful lady and two wonderful gentlemen who were also there and having conversations. So when I turned, they introduced themselves, and asked me what I was interested in coming to GRUE. And the first thing I said, I remember this very distinctly. The first thing I said was, I'm a rope top. And the moment I said that, the body language that was conveyed by the couple immediately changed. They leaned away from me. Whereas initially when we were talking, they were leaning into me and being very like physically, I guess, focused on the conversation they were having with me. And when that happened, I took note of it, but I didn't really make anything of it because I figured, oh, maybe they're just relaxing, they're leaning back. Then I said, I'm very passionate about my rope, about art, about consent. And when I said the word consent, the reaction again was different. The couple instantly, I guess the female part of the couple, started to turn away. She turned her face away from the corner of the group that I was talking to. And then finally I said, what I'm also very passionate about, excuse me, is helping to create safe spaces for people of color. And when I said that, she physically turned her entire body so that her back was facing me. And that was when I was like, oh, I see, okay. Because in the past, when I've had experience like this, it is because people have an expectation of the role I would be playing being that they expect me to be sexually submissive or submissive in general. That I wouldn't be as aware or sex positive or aware of all these things that I'm bringing up now as passionate interests of mine. And I would say that was maybe the first 15 to 20 minutes of when I was there. And that from there on, my night progressed fairly well. It was a very good experience from there. I would say that because we had really good conversation about consent, a lot of good conversation about, safe spaces and our personal experiences with it. But I will say that first 20 or so minutes, I wouldn't say the actual meet and greet was problematic, but the people that I encountered first were problematic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you there's a whole lot of people listening to this who are having... So there's this gut reaction that oftentimes happens, especially within a certain demographic, of which I am part of it. And it's this urge to want to think the best of people. And oftentimes when they hear an account like this, they'll start to say, well, that's just a turning away, or you can't tell from body language, or they didn't actually say. They do all these sort of second guessing things. So I'm going to, again, try and model this behavior because it's a hard habit to get out of. But there's an effort that can be done where you say, hey, you were there. You know more about this than I do. So I'm going to accept your account of things and say, that sucks. I'm sorry that happened.
Thank you.
So I have a question for you. JP and I both are, cishet white dudes of a certain age, both rope tops. I know that oftentimes when I do see someone come into the meet and greet, especially someone who is female and not accompanied by anyone else or doesn't seem to know anyone else, I actually hesitate to go up to them because I don't want to give the impression of, oh, here's the hot rope top, looking to mac on somebody. Would that have... JP is JP. JP tends not to send off warning signals, so he's been to be pretty good at that.
Sorry about that.
What would have been the ideal welcoming situation for you?
That's a very good question. I would say that when I first went to the meet and greet and I was looking for familiar faces, the only reason I thought that you guys might be GRUE was because you were kind of off in the back, you were by yourselves. And then I remember Naya picking up the red rope and being like, hey, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Now there's a leading.
Exactly. So having that, I guess you could say symbolic, signifier for me to look for was very helpful. What I will say that your JP's initial approach was not an issue, right? I kind of expected that a community organizer or a community leader would be the first person to introduce themselves to me when I didn't know anyone else there. Kind of like what happened when I went to my first munch and the community organizer there introduced herself to me first and then proceeded to explain what was happening and then introduced me to some people, it's something I expected there. So your approach was not in any way, I think, problematic. It didn't present any issues for me with respect to feeling like, oh, this is a hunky rope top trying to come and pick me up or something. um, it was it's more of what happens later. I never make the assumption, and I don't think anyone ever does make the assumption that someone that first approaches them is trying to mac on them or try to flirt with them or anything like that. I think that kind of conclusion is derived from an extended period of interaction. So, like I said, what happened with the couple from Ottawa that I mentioned was something that happened over a period of 15 to 20 minutes, right? So it took me some time to really say, oh, okay, so this is probably what they're looking for. And because I didn't fit into what they were looking for, they immediately lost interest, right? So to answer your question, I think you guys did perfectly fine in your introductions, in your meet and greet, for me anyway. When I admit that when you first said hi, I had the kind of suspicion that you might have been the infamous great dancer.
Hey, only half the rumors are true.
Yeah. But I also made space for the fact that I could be wrong. So when you first said hello, I was kind of cautious because of that experience. And I was like, okay, maybe not everyone here is as, progressive as I was told. And
I'm sitting here going, ooh, somebody said we were progressive. Yay.
and that's actually one of them.
Pay them more money.
It's actually one of the reasons why I was interested in coming, because there was a lot of conversation about how, you like to talk about consent. You like to talk about issues within the community and diversity and things like that. So I was like, okay, this sounds like something I can definitely get with and be a part of. So, I appreciate that you took the chance to come back the next day. I figured, after meeting only 2 people out of 5 or 6 people that I met there, and only the 2 people were kind of problematic, maybe not everyone there is going to be a problem. So, I tried, I usually give things a second chance. I give people chances, right? People can grow and change.
That's
thank you. I believe that it is a privilege that I have to make that choice. Not everyone feels the same way, and I choose to utilize that. That said, I guess it is interesting. I guess you could say that I come from a background that isn't as marginalized as some other members of the POC community. And when I say POC, I'm referring to all non-white people of color, which includes, South Asians, East Asians, Southeast Asians, Pacific Islanders, as well as Black people. And being a part of this community, being aware of this community, means that I have to acknowledge that being Southeast Asian, being East Asian, that comes with a certain set of privileges. That comes with being a bit more protected than maybe some other members of the POC community might be. And I have more chances than they do in a lot of respects. So where I can put my foot forward and move ahead to, I guess you could say, vet my experiences and relay them to people that I know who are interested, I will do that, right? Which is another reason why I decided, I need to push through and come through the entire experience of GRUE, because this is just the meet and greet. I'm interested in what happens in the rest of it. And just because I met a few bad apples doesn't mean everyone there is going to be rotten, right? So I'm giving chances. One person doesn't speak for the whole majority,
So can we go into? I mean,
Um,
what is it about the GRUE that I mean? You mentioned what attracts you to the GRUE. Can we talk a little bit about your kink history, like where you come from? I know in the Twitter feed you mentioned that you have leather in your kinky DNA as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into it and how you got into rope and things?
yeah, for sure. With respect to rope, I had an interest in it personally from a very young age. Before I knew anything about kambaku, shibari, rope tops, anything sexual in nature, even or BDSM in nature, we're talking probably 5, 6, close to 12, something like that. I was fascinated with rope and just tying things up, tying myself up, tying people up, whoever and whatever allowed me to put rope on them, I did it. And it's and I would do different things. Like with other people, I would tie them to objects. I would tie them to each other. I used to be a really big fan of cops and robbers, so I was the one who was roping people up and saying, "You're the bad guy."
Hmm. Anna Robin.
Exactly. So that was a part of kind of my play structure at the time. So I normalized rope in my everyday interaction quite early in age. It was not until I was probably hitting my double digits that I realized, oh, maybe this isn't quite so appropriate for everyone. I had a habit of tying parts of myself because I was fascinated by the color changes when the blood was when my blood was restricted. You know, I would tie fingers and limbs up until parts of me turned purple. I know it's not healthy, but
No
it was
tourniquet play.
something
Never heard. Well, may have, but sure.
exactly. Well, I would say it was unhealthy because I didn't know everything about it, or as much as I know about it now. And you know, when you don't know things, I guess you could always say there's a chance for injury.
Right.
I was always afraid of that, so I would play with my color changes. We'll say, but it never got to the point where I would lose feeling, I would lose sensation or anything like that. And I made sure that once I started getting a certain loss of sensation, I undid all my ties. Um, and even at a young age, I made sure that I kept a pair of scissors near me so that in the case I couldn't get the rope off, you know, quickly enough, I could just cut the knot and it would come off.
Hmm.
You know, just general common sense practices. So that's how I kind of got started in rope in that respect.
So that sounds like it wasn't even like necessarily a sexual kind of thing. It was just a desire to explore the medium itself.
That's right. Like in the beginning, it definitely was not sexual. The sexual aspect of it really grew on me as I entered into, you know, the later teens, things like that, and I was exploring with more sensation and decided, you know, rope might add an interesting twist to that sensation.
Yeah, I
And
see what you did there.
yeah, so when I had different partners, we would experiment with that. I would experiment on myself. I encourage other people to experiment with me. Even from a young age, I tend to prefer the company of people of color just because their experiences were something that I could relate to a little better than, say, the cishet Caucasian white community. Um, but from an early age, I recognized that there was a kind of glass ceiling when it came to self expression, when it came to sexual expression, and when it came to kink, especially. Certain things were just uh, not appropriate, we'll say.
Can you can you talk more about that? That's I've never heard that phrase used in that context.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. I think the term that is more commonly used now to describe what I'm talking about is respectability. Um, being that I'll speak on it from my perspective, being Chinese, being an East Asian. We're expected, on a conservative traditional sense, to be very respectful to our elders, respectful to each other. But at the same time, that respectability is controlled and restricted by how we carry ourselves. We have to have a certain amount of success. We have to wear a certain type of clothing. If we're too revealing, then we are often sexually stigmatized as being someone who's inappropriately sexual. So if, for example, a Chinese girl is curvy, she has larger breasts, she has ample hips, things like that. She's very, I guess you could say, matronly in shape. What we would call, I guess, the divine feminine shape. The expectation is for you to not express the sexuality that could be expressed in such a shape. If I'm expressing myself correctly, does that make sense?
So it's inappropriate for the person themselves, the woman themselves, to express their sexuality because they are considered to fit inside the divine feminine or matronly kind of thing?
Kind of. It's more in the sense that we're expected to be mothers, workers, and caretakers.
I guess I'm trying to clarify if it's talking about it's the individual can't express their sexuality, or it is inappropriate for someone else to express, say, sexual desire or intent with them.
It's both, actually.
Oh, okay.
It's both. It's a very conservative environment. At least that's my experience of it, because I came up in a very traditional and conservative family. Mm-hmm. And my experience of it with other Asian women has been very similar. There's been, in my experiences, there's been a lot of restriction as to the clothes that we can wear, how we can express ourselves to one another, who we interact with, what kind of lovers we can take. That kind of thing. Even the idea of living with someone that you've chosen to be your partner, not necessarily someone that you've married, but someone that you've chosen to be your partner and you trust and you want to stay with and live with, is something that is still frowned upon in large portions of the more traditional corners of my community.
So how did that translate into the kink scene when you got involved?
Well, I guess it's a good time to introduce that background. My personal experience has been that I will be approached because I'm not conventional. I'm not submissive. I'm not a bottom. I'm pretty outspoken. I'm not quiet. I'm not demure. I'm not any of those things that typically get stereotyped into or that Asian women are typically expected to be. And it always happens, or well, I won't say it always happens, but it tends to happen similarly in that I get noticed by other women of my community, and they'll be curious. And then eventually what that leads to is if they see me repetitively in the same places, same spaces, they'll come and talk to me. And then from there, it grows into a friendship. Once that friendship is established, normally what happens is I'll introduce my rope to them. And I will use that as a means of discussing consent, my personal connections with rope.
Ooh, can you unpack that? That's interesting to me.
Sure. I think that I can say that being a woman, being someone that identifies as being feminine and femme at large, consent is something that's very important to me. And that comes from having experienced consent is something that's been removed from me over the years. I'm saying a lot of ums. So as I grew older and I learned what consent was, and I learned the word for consent, it became something of a staple. I have to have consent. In fact, I would say it's not as easy as saying, yeah, sure. I need enthusiastic consent. I need consistent communication. And That's what I tell my bottoms. That's what I tell my friends. That's what I tell my partners. That's what I tell everyone. Um, Consent is very important to me. I will never touch you without your consent, even if it's as simple as to pat you on the shoulder and draw your attention, you know, because you never know how touch can affect someone. So when I speak with someone, with a friend about consent, especially as someone that's a part of my community that may not be as aware or as experienced, I find that that is my opportunity to share my experiences, share in my understanding of things, and invite them on that journey with me. I establish a place of comfort. I tell them this is something that you have the option of saying yes or no to. If you say no, everything stops. There is no, well, maybe I can try something different. Well, maybe we can do something different. You know, I'm not going to wheedle. I'm not going to whine. If you say you're not comfortable, it stops. But if you say you like this, then it can grow from there, right? So I like to establish that place of comfort, because a lot of the times what I find is when we say yes, it comes with discomfort. It comes with wondering, if I were to say no, am I still going to be respected? If I say I'm uncomfortable, am I going to lose this friend? If I say I'm not happy with what's happening, but I want you to be who you've been with me, I'm just not comfortable with what's happening with right now, is that okay? You know? And one of the conversations that we had at GRUE that I found very helpful was negotiating exit strategies in relationships. And I found
Very first session, yeah.
It was the very first one. And that was one that really stuck with me because it resonated with a lot of the conversations I've had with friends, with partners, with bottoms in the past. And I guess it resonated with me because my first conversation is always about consent. What you can feel comfortable doing with me and what you are not feeling comfortable doing with me can be expressed at any point of the relationship. And I will never judge you for it. I will never lose respect for you of it. I will never question your femininity or your masculinity or your beliefs or anything of that sort. Who you are. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
I was just wondering, how do you handle situations where it's I'm not sure if I'm going to like this or not, but I want to try it to find out, or I think I'm going to like this, but it terrifies me. I mean, that's one of the areas where enthusiastic consent is great, but sometimes it's hard to. Sometimes that is also a privilege.
It is
that some people can do and some people don't have. How do you deal with that?
Well, normally what I do is I don't ever just, for example, let's take it back to rope.
Always.
Always, right? For everything. Rope is applicable for all things in life. And I've had that situation happen before where someone's approached me and they say, I'm very interested. In fact, I'd like to try it, but I'm scared. Right? So what I'll do is I'll give them information first, because I find a lot of the reasons why we're afraid of things is because we don't know enough about it. We don't know enough about the history surrounding it. We don't know about the type of people who practice it. We don't know about how it's done and how we can control our own safety. We don't know enough about what we're afraid of to make, I guess, our own judgment calls on it. And so when we have to trust in someone else to help us experience this thing, that's a lot of trust to be placing in someone. That's potentially, in the case for, especially with something like suspension, that could be life, that could be a serious injury, And so I make a point of handing information to the person that's interested and cautious and scared. I'll give them articles. I'll talk to them about it. I'll explain my experience with it. And if by the end of the conversation, they're feeling comfortable enough and they do reiterate the fact that they want to try it in that moment, I'll do small things to start. I'll do a TK. I'll do a fat leg tie. Things that are still restrictive, that still carry the essence of what rope could grow into, but allows them the opportunity to grow into the experience of having something on their body that's restricting their movement and placing that trust in me gradually, right? Normally in my first ties, I will not bind arms because, and because that is something that contributes to that feeling of trust. At any time, they can say, stop. And if they find themselves unable to verbalize the words, they can gesture to me with their hands, stop. They can put their hands out in front of them and say, stop. If for some reason I've walked away, either to get them water or something has happened and I need to grab something, which almost never happens. I'll always keep an eye on my bottoms when I'm tying them. But in the worst case scenario, say something happens, I need to step away. There's always a pair of safety scissors or a cutting implement next to them in case they start losing sensation. I'll tell them, if you start feeling tingly in an area and you start losing sensation, you need to let me know so I can get you out of that situation. That could be potential nerve damage. And there is a risk for that whenever you tie with rope. Mm-hmm. I tell them if I'm not paying attention, which I should be at any time, but I make space for mistakes. If I'm not paying attention, or you find yourself not conveying yourself properly, I'm not understanding you, there are scissors right here. You are free to grab them anytime and cut them. This is just rope. I can replace it. Right?
I can hear a bunch of rope tops going, wait, what? The bottom can cut the rope? What?
But that's the kind of trust that I'm establishing them. They have to tell me that they are comfortable with giving me that power to say, you have to communicate to me that you don't want that control. You want me to take the full control, right? In those first initial ties, I'm testing the grounds between us to make sure that you trust me, that to prove that you can trust me. So I feel it's important to tell them you have that control too. If you ever want to break the scene and say, this isn't good for me, you're not taking care of me, I'm going to have to defend myself, you have that option, right? And I've never, ever had a situation where someone's had to cut themselves loose. And I attribute that to the fact that I've been attentive. I've been communicative. They've been comfortable with me. Now, I have had situations where they've told me, I'm kind of losing feeling here. Can we loosen the tie here? Can we not tie around this area? I'm starting to feel queasy. The communication is something that I keep up. And because of that, the issue of cutting the rope almost never comes up. But I introduce it as something that inspires trust. And it is an option. When I say it, I mean it. It's just because I've given them this option. I feel that their communication flows a lot more freely.
Nice.
So
it's interesting because it sounds beautiful. It's also, that's a different approach to negotiating scenes than, say, the kind of pickup play. The famous idea was, there's two extremes. There's a 17-page form that you fill out, that, from Jay Wiseman's books, and on the other side you have Philip the Fool, may he rest in peace, who would say, "Hey, you want to do some stuff?" That was the extent of his negotiation. So does that implies to me, and I could be wrong about this assumption, that that's not a lot of pickup play type of thing. That requires a lot of establishing of some kind of a relationship beforehand, and discussions in places where there's not loud music and wild screaming going on and things like that.
I would say that in my community, it's rare. We're very cautious people.
Oh, okay.
On top of that, to extend it beyond just my community, because I have the unique privilege, I'll say, of being able to play with other people of color. Um, my husband, being who he is, has friends within the Air Force community, and many of them being Black, they have approached us both for their own unique experiences and learning and things like that. And I can say that when you have a fear of loss of power, the fear of a loss of masculinity, when you have a fear of the loss of your respectability and all the numerous issues that comes with exposure as a person of color, um, the the privilege of pickup play is not really there for a lot of us. And as a result, such a thing is very, very rare. It happens. It happens. Um, but I will say that a lot of the time we are vetted. We are, um, how can you say it, referred.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people do talk to us well in advance. There's usually a Skype call. There's usually a conversation over the phone, and then an in-person conversation before any kind of touching or play ever happens. You know, um, and it's all a process of an extended negotiation. Who a lot of the people that we encounter play with is something of a conscious choice. It's not as simple as, oh, you're cute, you know, and I'd like to be, taught by you. I'd like to be caned by you, that kind of thing. It's more of a, from my experience, anyway, I need to know what you're about. I need to know that you're going to respect that I'm putting my body and my mind in your hands. And it's a heavy responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
And just so I'm clear, the reason why I think you mentioned it's because the consequences of things going wrong can be worse for people of color.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago that people were expelled from the Air Force just for being queer. Imagine if they were exposed for an alternate lifestyle. Same thing could happen, right? They could lose their entire life career. So the consequences are huge. And to a lesser extent, there are consequences for people in the Asian community as well, because there is this expectation of respectability. You have to be a certain way to earn the respect of your community. Anything outside of that is scary. And it's often something that is rebuked, if not silently and violently, in many communities.
Wow. I don't think it's something that usually comes to mind when these discussions are had.
I'm sorry if I took it into a darker, heavier.
No. This is, we've been having a lot of discussions about consent and things like that here on the Ropecast. So yeah, this is great, and it's astonishing because we haven't talked about that particular thing in spite of the hours we have devoted to talking about consent. So it's a very valuable perspective.
I'm happy that I can provide it.
Does that apply within the leather community? Can you talk about your leather roots? I'm a reason. This is a very selfish question because I started in just rope community and sort of fell into the leather community at a certain point thanks to a person named Rita Seagrave. And now I do identify as both leather and rope. And the differences are in the communities are both extreme and sometimes frustrating, at least on my end. So I was wondering about your experience when you said that.
I will say that there are differences. There is surprisingly, from my experience anyway, there is surprisingly less resistance in the leather community towards my being a top and femme and Asian than there is to me being those same things as a rope top. And that's something that I found surprising as well when I reflected on it a little while back. Um, there are more Asian women that top outside of rope, from what I've seen anyway, um, especially on a professional pro level, than I've seen in the rope community. Um,
That's so. Here's my frustration. This actually, there was recently an article put out by a great couple who write about this stuff called Black Pomegranate.
okay.
And they were talking about this idea that most rope tops are not, or that rope tops are not necessarily just cishet white guys.
Yes.
And I kept waiting for them to mention the fact that in Japan, most of the people who actually tie are women who are
Yes.
tying, pro doms who are tying their clients. And
That's
never
right.
once was that mentioned. I'm like, come on, if we're going to talk about who has the largest population of rope tops who are great at suspending people who are usually bigger than they are, let's talk about Japanese pro doms.
Yes, exactly. My favorite, actually, now, come to speak of it, is Yo Yoshida. She has some of the best sadistic rope I've seen.
Oh,
To
I'm
my,
not familiar with her.
oh, I'll send you some links.
Oh,
She is amazing.
excellent. I'm a big fan of Saki Kamiju. Um,
Awesome.
so, sorry, I interrupted. So you were talking about your leather, in the leather community, you're more accepted as a top.
Yes. That's my experience. Now, I can't speak for other people's experiences in that respect, but my experience is that exactly that is that I've been a lot more. It's been easier to be accepted as a rope top, or sorry, not as a rope top, as a general top, as someone who likes to play with whips, who likes to play with canes, and flogging, things like that. That's something that's generally, from my experience, more accepted for
Mhm.
me than if I were to come into the rope scene with my bag, with my kit, and saying, I'm a rope top, I can self tie, and I'm open to tying pretty much anyone that would like to consent to it and learn about it with me, you know. And I've been trying to determine why that is the case for the longest time. And the only explanation that I've been able to come up with is that it has to relate with, without getting too deep into it, I guess the sociopolitical and socioeconomical understanding and expectations, racial expectations, cultural expectations that are existing at large within the Western communities. There is this idea that Asian femme women are supposed to be soft and demure and obedient and submissive.
Unless
you
you're
know,
Lucy Liu, yeah.
yes, unless you Lucy Liu. But that is a lot of the predominant expectations. So, for example, I've had experiences where I've come into a rope situation, and I've been challenged. I've been told, well, I've never been topped by an Asian female before. Are you sure that's something you're capable of?
Oh
You know,
God, I
yeah. So,
I can't believe people still say, "Wow."
you
Tell
know,
me, tell me that you taught them a lesson, or that you just walked away. Either one would be
I
beautiful.
walked away from that.
Excellent. Yes. It's like, you don't get me if you don't. Yeah.
Well, that's just it. I have to take care of my personal safe space as well,
Yes.
right? And so a notion like that is toxic, I feel, to my journey in rope and my journey as a top. I have to have self-care for myself too, as much as I care for the bottom. And it's not uncommon. I've heard it before. The most common thing that comes across is, oh, all the Asian women I've met have been bottoms. They're the ones usually being tied. You're different. and
I
then
guess that may be true in their
it
experience, but
it may
yeah.
be, yeah. And on its own, that statement would have been fine. But normally, it comes across with an additional addendum of, what's your experience? Have you been taught by so and so?
Yes.
have you suspended before?
I'm sure there are going to be people who wonder that too. I mean, where did you get your
Credibility,
well,
your
not
credit.
credibility. Where did you learn? Like I here's the
Yeah,
thing. I've gone to lots of workshops and stuff, but I wouldn't say I was taught by these people. I
right.
figured stuff out by looking at pictures of Ian Rath and reverse or Ian Rath's work and reverse engineering it. So,
Mhm.
I personally think that there's a lot to be said just for like you talking about tying people up for years and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And it has been touch and go for better or for worse. Right? I've had those experiences. I know what not to do
Yeah.
and also what to do. Thankfully, nothing's been permanent, so that's been good. Um, but as I grew older, I did get a better sense of biology. So
Oh, our reckless youth. What fun.
yes, exactly. But yeah, and that's been part of the reason. Drawing back to the question you asked me, that's been part of the reason why it's been easier to be accepted as a top that flogs, that participates in percussion play, that likes all these different things, than it has been for me to be accepted as a rope top. You know, and it's not just one or two occasions. Like if it was just one or two people, I wouldn't be saying this is something that prevents me from feeling comfortable at many rope situations. Um, it's something that happens pretty consistently, uh, and I'm very cautious as a result, and as to which environments I go into.
If it helps any, we're trying to make it better.
I get that. There are very, very many people, very many community leaders that I've spoken to who have actually approached me to say, how has your experience been like? In fact, when I was at GRUE, that was one of the main questions I was asked. Are you okay? How is your experience? Are you finding yourself enjoying yourself? And that was part of what really made me feel at ease there. um, One of the predominant senses I think that comes across very easily is the sense that you're isolated in your experience as a person of color. There's no one really looking out for you. And when there's only a few of you, two or three people in a sea of what could potentially be all white faces, all Caucasian faces, it can very easily feel like you can't be vulnerable. You can't be yourself. You have to present yourself a certain way to protect yourself.
Yeah, I dated for quite a while a woman of color, and she would often go with me to events, and we'd be walking along, and she would suddenly wave and say, "Hey, other black person," um, because there would be like one other person there, and I think it was we went to Beat Me in St. Louis, and
Mhm.
that was the first time that there was a more people that more people of color of various kinds. There, and it was this such a new experience for her, and that was sad.
Mhm.
But that actually is a perfect your comment is a perfect segue into the other question I wanted to ask you, because you said you're passionate about the creating safe spaces for people of color, and especially given the current climate here in the United States, that's something that we're very concerned about. It, and for Ropecraft, we just actually set up a scholarship to try and bring someone in to specifically create that. Can
Oh,
you tell me what that looks like? So that, I mean, here's the thing: for a white person to try and say, "Okay, I'm going to set up a safe space for a person of color," I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what goes into that. So, what in your mind goes into that situation?
okay. So what I can relate to you is what's been told to me and my personal experience.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's what I was hoping.
what I'm also going to, I guess, preface what I'm about to say is with is what I feel personally to be a safe space may not be something that someone else feels is a safe space.
Wait, you don't speak for all people of color?
Oh,
I thought that was
what a concept.
negotiated when we did that. Wow, that's how strange. Yeah.
And it's sad that I have to preface it like that, but
I no,
you know,
I get you. I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I am looking for what this particularly looks like to you.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So for me particularly, I feel the most comfortable when the crowd that's at a particular space is diverse. And that diversity means um, not just people of color, because people of color are important. And I mean that in sense of seeing Middle Eastern, seeing Southeast Asians, seeing Pacific Islanders, seeing East Asians, seeing Black people, seeing Islanders, all different types of people and genders of people. Um, but that also includes queer folk, that includes members of the LGBTIA, I think is where it at right now. People there seeing different representations of gender, of sexual identity. When there's a larger group of diverse people who are also marginalized to different varying degrees, then my experience as someone that's a person of color who is to a degree marginalized is something that I can relate to in someone else. There's a sense of community in that I've felt alone before, you've felt alone before, and now we're in a space together, so maybe we can look out for each other.
Okay.
So that,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that that's for me is what that means, being a safe space. And to date, I've only really been in one space that's been like that, to be honest.
Okay. What was that space?
Should I mention? It's a
It's up to you. I'll be honest. The question I appreciate hearing how it feels. That unfortunately for people who are not people of color who are trying to set up a safe space, it's hard to set up a feeling.
right.
So I'm also looking for kind of like literally what did that look like? Was it a room? Was it a corner? Were there snacks? How was it advertised? Things like that.
Okay. Well, I don't think I should mention the name of the group at the time because it no longer exists. So there's not really a point in bringing up a space. It's no longer there. But what I can do is describe what it was like.
Yes.
It was a rope teaching seminar, and it was in a large room that was isolated from the outside. So you have that added privacy. No windows, just a door that comes in and out, like a basement. There was food always. There was always drinks, non-alcoholic, of course. But there was the option of, getting up and going to grab food, much like with GRUE. There was a buffet of food available all the time. But I'm not sure that is what contributed to the space. What really contributed, I feel, to the space is that there were queer people, there were Middle Eastern people, there were, like I said, different POC from all cultures and races and gender identities there, and they were all accepted for themselves. There was no judgment. No one looked at each other and said, "Oh, you're here." No one spoke to each other or rejected each other in such a way that made one another feel ostracized. It was very accepting. It was very, "Hi, how are you? My name is this. This is what I'm into. What are you into?" People talked to each other. It was a lot like GRUE, I will say, in that respect. People there accepted each other as students of the same craft. And it was equalizing across the board. There was an expressed and very well-kept expectation of tolerance, in that if there was ever a complaint that something happened that made someone uncomfortable, or someone was offended, or someone made a comment that was disrespectful, and when it was brought to their attention, they completely were disrespectful again, and all that stuff, and it blew up. If something like that happened, the community organizers would take it upon themselves to make sure it didn't happen again. They were very active in that group. They knew everyone. They introduced themselves to everyone. they were, if not on a comfortable conversationalist level and standard with most people, they were also friends with these people. You know, they would friend each other on FL, on FetLife. They would ask for input. They'd say, "How are you feeling? Is this good? How was the lesson? Did it go too fast? How did they present? Do you feel like this is, applicable to you? Do you feel comfortable talking about it here with me? If not, you can email me, but I'd love your feedback." The atmosphere of communication was really important, and what I feel lended to a very equalizing environment. Um, from the community leader standpoint of what they contributed. I'm not sure how they advertised it. Um, I believe, well, how I found the group is that it was recommended to me by another rope person in the community. Uh, excuse me. When I was asking them about resources, classes, seminars years ago. And they recommended that well before current communities like Rope Fight and things were established within our community here.
Gotcha.
So it was more about the efforts that were put into making it a safe environment, and about the people there who are adhering to that requirement for a safe environment.
And was there a actual host per se, or was it just a general group?
There was a host. There were two hosts, and how it worked was they would invite instructors in. It wasn't them always leading the group; they were just the organizers. That's how they presented themselves.
I'm just really so this was a ongoing group.
Oh yeah, yes,
okay, so
yes, it was.
In my head, I was picturing within a event space.
Oh no! It was more of a teaching group. It was a socializing group and a teaching group. So. The organizers would make it a monthly thing. Mm-hmm.
And when they brought in instructors, were the instructors also people of color, or were they from all walks of life?
From all walks of life, I would say. Unfortunately, for the times that I've gone, I've never seen a person of color up there. I see maybe one. Yes, one. Yeah. Yes, definitely one. I've seen one. But the predominant demographic of the instructors, even though they're international, they've called for people from the States, from all over the world, whoever they can get, really, who is willing to come. Excuse me. The predominant, I guess, racial makeup, you could say, have been white. Very few people of color. And that was something I actually didn't think about until now. So that's interesting.
Well, I mean, so there's a lot of theories behind that. Some people would say, well, that's because that's just the demographics of this community. We can't have this because there's just not that many people of color there. And I can sometimes see that. I grew up in a neighborhood that was there was exactly 2 Asian people and 1 black person in the entire school.
Oh yeah.
And so I understand that was my high school experience, which was very different than my elementary and middle school experience here. And I could see that, but at the same time, if let's say that's one community, 15 miles north was a major city with a large, several different communities of color, of Hmong, of Vietnamese, black, and other cultures here, Mexican, Latino, lots of different kinds of things like that going on. The question is more, I mean, to my mind, what I usually tell people, or what I've also heard people be told, is if you're not seeing a representation of people of color in your group, you're not making it welcome enough. You're not making it attractive to them.
That is true. I would agree with that.
And the question is, how do you do that? So, not that I expect you to come up with an answer to that, but I'm saying that's kind of the challenge. Is how do we make that happen?
It is a challenge because on top of that, not only is there not a lot of representation, but there's also, like I mentioned earlier, there's a fear of exposure for a lot of the people of color that are in this community. So because of this fear of exposure, a lot of the POC that I've met tend to play with other POC. They tend to go to places they're with POC. They tend to only be around POC. We'll have our own events. We'll do our own things, as opposed to coming out to something that could potentially be unsafe for us, right? And as a result, there is a gap. There is a lack of representation. But as for how to make it safer, that's something that I'm not sure anyone has the answer for right now. You know,
I think higher, I think higher representation is one of those things, and it's
Definitely.
frustrating sometimes. Let me preface this. At first, when I heard someone say, "Well, I can't think of any quality instructors who are people of color," and my head just exploded because I go, let's start with Murphy Bloom, Melina Williams, Do Not Go Gently, Darian Hill Ray, David Wraith. Oh my God, David Wraith's incredible. Just go. Go. I mean, I can think of 5 right off the top of my head, and then I went, wait a minute. I am a person of privilege, and I have had the privilege of doing a podcast, or being in a situation where I've been able to do a podcast for 10 years and get to know people in the community.
Right.
So let's change that from a head exploding to a, hey, if somebody needs recommendations, please contact me. I will put you in touch with these people because they really they're fantastic instructors.
Definitely, and I think that is something important to recognize as well. I think you're absolutely right. You do have the opportunity of meeting a lot of different people and talking to different people. And I will say that as someone who, when I was first entering the scene and learning about the various different ways of rope and leather and percussion and everything that's associated with it, it's very easy to feel like there are no other people of color out there. It's not like there's a list of, oh, hey, here's a list of POC that you can talk to, at least that I haven't seen anyway. Yeah. But that is something that actually my husband and I will mention that we are developing, is creating a personal list of people that we've vetted or that we've talked to or that we've heard about that are safe to talk to and play with, that will be open to helping people, you know.
So you're making a personal list. How does that work?
Okay, so it is not so much that we're making a personal list, so much as we strive to make a mission statement and experience as much as we can before we talk to people. We try to be more passionate, bring more passionate POC to the scene that are interested in education and work on enlightening others. That's what it is mostly. Yeah.
Let me clarify that. Personal lists, absolutely. What I would hate to see is the lazy way out of this idea of representation is tokenism. Of saying, we need to have a person of color. Let's go down the list. Oh, okay, let's take these 3. Just that kind of thing.
I understand you. Yeah.
So that's and it's a delicate line to walk because you don't want to fall in it on either side. And I can tell you from event producer's perspective, there are so many ducks to herd at a time that it can be difficult to try and devote the attention that's needed to this. So anyway, so we are a little bit over time, but this is a great interview on my end anyway. Can I shoot my lightning questions at you, the one I ask everybody that I interview?
Sure.
Okay. First question. What is your favorite food?
Ramen.
Ramen. What's a good ramen joint in Toronto?
I really like Kinto ramen
Kinto
so
ramen.
far.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll look into that for Naya's. I'm not a fan of ramen, but Naya is. So next time we go to Toronto, we'll take her out there. And what's your beverage of choice?
And cranberry ginger ale.
Oh, cranberry ginger ale. Okay.
Mm.
What is blanking on my own questions? This is terrible. I normally have a list I go down. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. What's a good book you've read recently, or a book you'd recommend? What's a book more people should read?
A book more people should read. Oh, I can answer that one. Give me 1 second and I'll pull it up real here.
God, I finally phrased that question right.
Now, are we talking kink related only, or just
any kind of book? Any kind of book.
So the book that I would say is very helpful is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, Stephen Covey, right?
That's right, Stephen Covey.
All right, go into the classics. And how about a movie?
Movie.
Or TV show, whichever.
Let me see. That I've watched recently?
No, just a movie you recommend. Somebody says, I'm looking for a good movie. And you'd say, oh, you should watch.
Thinking. I don't watch a lot of movies. So maybe, let me see, TV shows. Lately, I've been on a huge comic book kick. So anything that is comic related. So I've really, really enjoyed Daredevil recently. So we'll say that.
Really? Okay. I actually didn't care much for season 2. It is, the disposable ninja trope is kind of
that is true.
Overdone, but I did like Elektra.
Elektra was good. There's some things there that I kind of was a little iffy on, but it's their take on what happened in the actual graphic novel. So,
have you seen the new? I agree with you on there. Have you seen the new Wonder Woman trailer? I
have. I am very interested in seeing what they do in that.
Yeah, I'm prepared to be disappointed, but I really hope I'm not.
I hope not too. I'm prepared to be, because it's such a delicate, I think, representation. It'll be interesting what they do with it. I'm very eager into seeing how they present the story of Wonder Woman, and I'm hoping to be impressed, but I'm prepared to not be too impressed.
Poor DC. They've let us down so many times. It's just not fair.
I know, exactly.
Okay, the geek level's getting a little too loud and too high here. I should tell everyone, when you and I did have the most conversation at GRUE outside of at the after room, we were talking about DS stuff. Was we were talking about sketching and drawing and things like that. So, sorry, listeners, you're gonna have to deal with the fact you should feel lucky you didn't get an entire podcast of SuiSauce and I just talking about comics and drawing and things.
Yeah.
So let's see. So I did the book, food. All right. What's something in your rope bag that people would be surprised to see?
I don't use normal safety scissors.
Oh, what do you use?
I have them, but I don't use them. I have a cable cutter. I'm just going to grab here because I can't remember the branch or the brand of it. It's a cable cutter because I find that my experience with safety shears is that they're not exactly always made the same quality. In fact, I've had experiences where I've spoken with manufacturers and they say, yeah, this isn't going to be very good with paracord. This isn't going to be very good with anything other than cotton, really. It's not made to be used across the board or universally. And if I'm going to spend money on something for safety, I'm going to spend on something I know is going to work across the board. Mm-hmm. So what I have is a cable cutter from Gerber. And I can send you a picture of it because I can't remember.
I'm looking at I'm looking at images of cable cutter for Gerber right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it kind of like
It's
a rounded tip kind of thing?
it's a rounded tip. It's mostly gray and dark gray. It looks kind of like a hook with two finger inserts, holes in it, so you can hold it kind of as if you're making a fist, and the knife is actually over your knuckles where they should.
I'm not looking at it then. So yeah, I would probably appreciate a picture.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll
Because all
send you a
the
picture.
cable cutters are showing as part of multi-tools kind of things.
Hmm. Yeah, no, this is definitely a single use. It's or single purpose, we'll say. It is meant to cut cable, rope, anything of that sort, and that's the reason why I chose that as opposed to the standard safety shears. I've tried certain. I've used certain safety shears in the past where the blades are just haven't cut; they just bend and they warp. And I never want to be in a situation where I do need to cut the rope and I can't because my safety shears aren't functioning properly.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Huh. Yeah, I'm looking at the Gerber website, looking at. I found the strap cutter, but not the cable. All right, so that's, and I imagine it looks quite intimidating too, which can always be fun. No, this is to make you feel safe, honest. And so I have a magic wand, and I can wave this magic wand and make anyone, fictional, real, past, present, alive, dead, whatever. And if they were dead, then they're alive now. I'm not going to judge. And they will want to play with you. Who would you like me to have manifest?
Hmm. Let me think. I am going to totally geek out here. I would choose Storm.
Storm. That's the first.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Yeah.
Why in particular Storm? Do you mind sharing?
One for the fact that she's so very, very attractive to me, but at the same time, because she seemed to me, she's kind of what I would imagine to be the personification of someone who is self-actualized. She very much carries confidence. She's well experienced. She knows herself. She knows the world. And I would just really, really enjoy sharing an experience with someone like that who is self-aware. That it's almost intimidating.
Cool. All right. Storm is a new one. That's fantastic. All right. Well, those are the lightning questions. I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope we get to see you again. Can I just put in I don't know if you have any interest in it, but we did set up that scholarship for the POC Safe Space coordinator for Ropecraft, and I think you still have a couple of days. It might be something you might be interested in looking at setting up, because if you're passionate about doing that, it's the opportunity to do it, and Ropecraft will cover all expenses. So,
Oh, wow.
thanks to some help from Twisted Monk and Karma Rope. So,
Definitely look into that.
excellent. Well, thanks a lot.
Not a problem. I'm very happy that and honored, really, to be talking with you in this cast.
Well, it's great to have your voice here. This is long needed.
Thank you.
So I want to thank SuiSauce again for that thought-provoking. Oh my God, that was so thought-provoking. So many brain ideas coming out of that kind of thing. And also, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on a set of those Gerber wire cutters. I think those were really, really sexy. So if you have any questions, you can always contact me, greatanswer@gmail.com. You can, as you heard, find SuiSauce on FetLife, SuiSauce. And again, thank you to Karma Rope for sponsoring this particular podcast and others besides. Your help is always affected, and I still get people coming back to me saying, "Oh my God, that podcast with Matt just blew my mind," which that's podcaster cannot get a higher compliment than that. If you have other suggestions for the Ropecast, you can feel free to email me, greatanswer@gmail.com. You can also find me on FetLife at greatanswer. Twitter, I'm greatanswer. Greatanswer.com is my website. Ropecast.com is this website. We are sprucing that up. You will find direct links to Karma Rope and also to Twisted Monk Rope. Full disclosure, those are links that are affiliate links. So if you actually purchase rope through them, then I will get a little bit of help to keep this thing going and keep me caffeinated. You will get to hear a Ropecast, a combination Ropecast from Synergy. We're going to be recording at Synergy with a fancy setup. That'll be exciting, coming up next week. And then it will be lots of Ropecasts on the road. So looking forward to that. If you are going to be at one of the places I'm going to be and you'd like to have a little Ropecast meetup, I would love to meet the people that listen to this podcast and talk to you directly. So please contact me, let me know. And in the meantime, I will be here in the rope bondage capital of the world, Madison, Wisconsin. That's some good rope.